Welcome to Unews. Today is Monday, July 1st. I'm Andrea Linares. Thanks so much for joining us. President Trump is now back at the White House after a 4-day trip to Asia. While there, he became the first sitting U.S. president to step on North Korean soil. And this morning, the president is describing his meeting with the North Korean leader as wonderful. And Trump made it clear that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be his chief negotiator, despite the fact that North Korea previously demanded Pompeo be removed from those talks. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the National Hispanic Caucus are in South Texas today investigating several facilities used to detain immigrants. Claudia Uceda is traveling along with the delegation and joins me now with the very latest on this. Claudia.
Texas, where I am here with 14 congressmen and women who have come to investigate. They are going to tour 3 detention centers, including the Clean Station, the controversial station, who we know children told lawyers about inhumane. Norma Torres, thank you for being with us. What do you want to see? What are you expecting to look today?
Absolutely.
What are you going to look for?
Today we will be meeting with a group of nonprofit organizations who are already working on the ground, helping to unify the families that have been released from custody. That's the first meeting. But secondly, we want to make sure that when we arrive to the Clinton Center, that the U.S. government is doing right by these children.
Now, let me ask you, are you going to have access to these children? Let's remember that these children were the ones who told the lawyers about these bad conditions.
As always, CBP in Homeland Security has said to us that we are able to look at the children, to inspect where they are staying, the locations, but we're not allowed to talk to kids. Somehow we will find
What's going to happen next after you tour these 3 centers? What are you going to do with that information that you received?
The priority for us is to ensure that, number one, we're facilitating medical treatment for these children. And number 2, that there is a humane.
Now, the purpose of this is so that you have information so that you are all able to write a legislation, right?
Absolutely. It was unfortunate that in the funding bill, the emergency funding bill that we passed, there were no guarantees that were written into the law to ensure that this money was going to be spent
to clarify that she's the only congresswoman who is from Central America. Now back to you.
Thank you, Claudia, for that interview and all that information. Meanwhile, the Trump administration continues to defend conditions at border migrant facilities, but an internal report recently obtained by NBC News details a different reality. It outlines appalling conditions and even agents' fears of possible revolts by migrants. Lorraine Cáceres has more.
The center was redacted in that report. It also said children at the center did not have clean clothing or mats to sleep in, and at least 5 people a day had to be transported to the hospital while agents tried to quarantine people with symptoms of the flu, chickenpox, and scabies. Meanwhile, the president says deportation raids will happen after July 4th if Democrats do not come to an agreement on fixing asylum laws.
This very closely. Thanks so much, Lorraine. And Border Patrol officials have unveiled a tent complex in Arizona. It's designed to hold migrant children and families who cross the U.S. border. Dulce Mazareño takes a look at this new facility that is expected to hold several hundred people. Motel 6 has agreed to pay $10 million to settle a class action lawsuit over claims that... Coming up next, a petting zoo. And welcome back to Unews. Closing arguments are set to begin today in the trial of a Navy SEAL. Eddie Gallagher is accused of killing an ISIS prisoner, shooting at civilians, and other crimes during his deployment to Iraq 2 years ago. Gallagher could spend the rest of his life in prison if convicted of murder. Paola Byron has much more. Only weeks after testifying before Congress on behalf of 9/11 first responders, retired NYPD detective Luis Alvarez has passed away at the age of 53. Fabiola Galindo remembers the man, his legacy, and the fight that continues for tens of thousands of more victims.
Proposal to permanently extend the fund will authorize it through 2089. It has already gotten the approval from the Judiciary Committee, and Senator Mitch McConnell said the Congress will address the fund. In New York, Fabiola Galindo, Unews.
Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer is calling for an investigation into the recent American deaths. It's a thing now about E. coli after a child died and 3 others got sick. Authorities suspect a petting zoo at a San Diego County fair is to blame. Gianni Aponte has the story. It's a terrible story to hear that. And coming up next, welcome back to Unews. An investigation is underway into the plane crash in Texas that killed 10 people. It's the state's deadliest crash in decades. The small plane crashing just after takeoff and then exploding into flames. Aranza Loizaga has the very latest. Let's go to Florida now, where a sheriff's deputy was dragged by a driver during a traffic stop, and the whole thing was caught on camera. The suspect has now been charged with attempted murder. We should warn you that the video you are about to see may be graphic for some viewers. Andrea has the story. The driver says uneven lanes on the highway caused a very scary camper crash in North Carolina, and it was sentenced to death, spending almost 25 years in prison after being convicted of a horrifying crime. But he's free after the California Supreme Court overturned his conviction, and now he's filing a lawsuit. Juan Carlos Gonzalez has the story. 1 year since Andrea, Mexico. Today marks 1 year since President Andrés Manuel López Obrador took office. During his campaign, he promised to end corruption, reduce violence, and grow the Mexican economy. But has he delivered? We're now joined by Valeria León, who's going to give us a better view into his first year in office. Valeria.
Hi, we're standing here in front of the National Palace in Mexico City, where the 1 year celebration of Andrés Manuel López Obrador's election took place, and it's underway. Many here of his followers are on the main plaza ready for this celebration. As you might remember, he won by a landslide. But let's review the biggest challenges he has faced during this period. And yesterday, several thousand people marched across Mexico to demand his resignation, but he still has...
Thank you, Valeria, for that complete recap. And coming up next, Team USA. And then there were 4. Yes, we're talking about the Women's World Cup and a crucial game for Team USA. The team is just 2 victories away from winning the title, again facing off against England in the semifinals. Meridi Morangi has much more. Aranza will be waiting for you. But first, coming up next right here on Unews, celebrating 50 years after the police raid that sparked the modern-day gay rights movement. So stick around. 2019 marked the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots in Greenwich Village in New York City. It's often considered the catalyst of the modern gay rights movement. As Ana Barbie explains, the New York City Pride March was elevated from an already huge pride tradition to the world's most significant pride event this year. So this Monday is a day to celebrate all things Canadian. Canada Day marks the anniversary of Canada myself. And that's all the time that we have for the first hour of Unews, so stay tuned for our second hour. Much more information coming up next today with Aranza Loizaga. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great one.